Today's video will catapult you into the electrifying world of large language models. It's like the prestigious Chat GPT and the upcoming juggernauts like HuggingChat. Aww. So we're gonna embark on a journey, a mind-expanding quest, where we're gonna first soar through the clouds at 30,000 feet, finding ways to supercharge your productivity. Then we're gonna dive deeper and submerge ourselves in the world of these AI titans. And then I'm gonna try to paint you a personal picture of where I think the world is going and why. And then we'll talk about some of the new seed technologies that look like they're gonna sort of leapfrog or come together on top of the other models. Smash subscribe for an unforgettable ride right now. So now let's talk about why the prompt engineer's skill of the future is to think like a CEO. When an AI tool like Chat GPT gives better answers, it could literally lead to more profits for a company. So that's why some forward-thinking companies are starting to hire prompt engineers. And they're building internal coursework for how to prompt it in the best way for their company. Like just a few years ago, this would have seemed like something out of a sci-fi movie. It's crazy this is happening, but here's the challenge. To get the best results, you still need to know what you're looking for. You have to be able to explain what it is that you want. And this can be surprisingly hard. This is a skill in its own. It's like asking people, tell me what you need to be happy. Oh, a boat and a car and a house, there you go. And then they're like still unhappy. It's just not that easy. To think critically about the response you get and then adjust those specific words to get even more refined. And finally, you gotta wrap it all in sort of a layer of ignorance. You have to know some of the limitations of your own skills. So even if you're lower in a company, if you're a prompt engineer, the skill of the future is to think like the CEO. That means think about ChatGPT as you giving a manager a job to do. And that manager figures it out on their own. That could be searching the web, that could be enlisting other agent GPTs, or who knows what it'll be in the future, maybe even sending a robot to do something. But let your manager do the subcontracting. You focus on what it is that you actually want done, just like a CEO would. So now let's talk about how to get the optimal results. Instead of thinking about ChatGPT as a one-way street, it's a little bit more of a back and forth. Justin Ho wrote on Medium how he felt bothered by the fact that ChatGPT only gives him answers. I know answers sound like all you want, but he started thinking, why not have it give me some questions? Like most people use ChatGPT in a one-way conversation. But what if we could have a deeper two-way conversation with a large language model like ChatGPT? Well, instead of asking for answers, ask for questions. Tell it to play the role of an advisor and to critically evaluate you. Ask it to help you improve your productivity, your relationships, the speed in which you learn. And you don't have to worry about being judged or fired or lonely. This is a great playground to experiment with what it could be like. Justin argues you should think of yourself as a movie director when you're interacting with ChatGPT. You direct the scene, define the boundaries, assign the role, describe the actions, and explain how you want everything to behave. So you know how everybody at work seems to love that outside the box thinker? Well, now there's a fine-tuned large language model called DreamGPT that can do that for you also. So imagine ChatGPT, but it thinks way outside the box. Well, that's the goal of a new project called DreamGPT. And it starts by picking a random word, let's say metal hat or song. Then it thinks of different ideas, ways you could use these words, and it makes a title and a description. The program then analyzes those full descriptions and decides which one's the most outside the box, which one's the most unique. Think of it like a filter for ideas, but it always throws away the one that makes the most sense. So it scores each one of these concepts on things like uniqueness, potential money-making value, usefulness, ease of making it into a real thing, and the potential of positive impact into the world. So the longer it runs, the weirder and more wild it gets, just like some grandparents. Hey, so if you happen to be one of those people that likes to talk to objects when nobody's around, I've got the perfect LLM for you. How crazy would it be if you're at work and your boss walks in on you and finds you chatting with a PDF? I know it sounds a bit like sci-fi, or at least the Star Trek kind of more mundane, boring kind of sci-fi, but that is now possible with a tool called PrivateGPT. Now, if this did happen, your boss actually probably would be pretty pleased because there's really great utility in being able to talk to documents. So like all organizations or companies, you do more emails, you make more documents, and some of the best insights tend to get buried. But now you can connect this PrivateGPT things to apps like Notion, Jira, Slack, GitHub, stuff like that. And they say there's not data sharing and the documents stay on your computer, but I've also been researching videos about cybersecurity and prompt engineering, so I can definitely see how it would be awesome for business to have a tool like this, but just dig into the details before you implement something like this. So now let's talk about diving through a bunch of data noise to find one really interesting signal that you can find from Mother Nature. But did you know some artificial intelligence experts are working on the ability for humans to communicate with animals? That's right, you might be having a conversation with a majestic elephant or chatty bird. Coming soon. You frame up a little bluebird with your phone to take a photo and you realize that boom, it's translating what the birds are saying into human English. Well, this is the future that's envisioned by the Earth Species Project. They're in the early stages of using artificial intelligence to translate from English to animal. We've seen computers translate from human to human languages, human to code languages, and even decipher all sorts of other patterns that are much more complicated than language. But I don't know, like, do animals have an actual conversation that we can translate into English? And despite the complexity, those folks over at ESP are optimistic. They believe in a few years, interspecies communication could be a reality. So prepare yourself now for that future conversation with your neighborhood squirrel. So now let's take a step back, because if actually there is a chance we can talk to animals, you might be wondering, like, what kind of thing is a large language model? So if you've ever just sat down and you've got past that initial thing where you ask a few questions and you really start to feel like you're connecting with something like Chat GPT or Google's Bard, the secret ingredient of what makes this work is called a transformer. And that's the T in Chat GPT. And that has made it exceptionally proficient in language comprehension. So think of it as an astoundingly intelligent autocorrect that can read through words and just predict the next one. Like somebody laying railroad, just track after track after track, you know? Like what they did before sets where the next piece of track goes. Now the transformer was a little bolt-on that wasn't even there in the earliest versions, and it helped create self-attention. So that's akin to reading a paragraph and knowing what words are the key words. Like if you could only take a few words out of a paragraph to get the gist of it across to somebody, what would those words be? But keep in mind, because it's something like autocorrect that's happening, that's why it's not infallible. That's why sometimes it hallucinates. All right, now let's talk about the new large language on the block. It's called Hugging Face's HuggingChat. Will it take down Chat GPT? Hugging Face is an awesome tech company that has now released something called HuggingChat, which is a new Chat GPT competitor. It's impressive, it's open source, and it's super smart. And right out of the box, it's much easier to plug this thing into a whole bunch of different applications. It's more for the open source community. So HuggingChat is already great at talking with different APIs. It can do swift research, it can connect to the internet, it knows what's up. And it can even go out there and recruit other large language models that might have different types of access or be specialized in different ways to help it. And there's like a lot of buzz on the internet right now in like the tech world that what's gonna happen with this is that we're gonna see like a more closed but kind of highly trusted ecosystem like Chat GPT and plugins, and then HuggingChat being sort of the core of all these other different applications that'll work a little bit faster, be a little bit more risky, but probably be more ubiquitous and go kind of broader, which has parallels to the way the app stores work. So you can maybe think of the Apple App Store as more the Chat GPT world, and the Android App Store is more of the HuggingGPT world. Obviously, we're in the first inning right now, but that's kind of how the horses look like they're aligned, you know? So now let's talk about super in context learning, SuperICL or ICL. I don't know how they say it, but it doesn't matter how they say it because it unlocks the full potential of large language models. So imagine you're using an AI language model like ChatGPT to accomplish tasks, but it just can't get it right. Well, there's a new concept that's called super in context learning. So SuperICL first takes the smaller, more flexible brain and fine-tunes it for your needs. And then when you ask the small model about something, it uses that more intuitive brain to change what you're saying into a way that it can then prompt the bigger brain in a way that gets the most out of it. So you could say something like, show me a cool dinosaur. And then it might translate it into a long block of text that explains like what cool dinosaurs look like and what kind of skin color they should have and background it should be. And early tests show that this works remarkably well for getting people what they want. So now I want to talk about how there's some nuance with the large language models, and they often fall into these three big buckets. And one of those buckets is ChatGPT and why that one has been so much more successful than the others. So the big tech companies like Meta, OpenAI, and Google are in a fierce race for the future of artificial intelligent large language models. But did you know that large language models come in 3 flavors? But instead it's encoder-only models like BERT, and they're the best at taking human language and quickly putting them into computer code, so it's really good for interacting with something like a robot that needs to move an actuator. And then there's decoder-only models like ChatGPT, which can whip up text from scratch. They can imagine something from a prompt. So these hybrid types are like models like T5 and BART, and they're great multitaskers and great with translations. Now the star of the show is obviously the decoder model. Everybody loves ChatGPT right now, but I wanted to show you this awesome large language model tree of evolution to show you how everything's connected. So this was posted by Yann, LeCun, one of the experts in the industry, works for Meta. So this chart goes from 2018 all the way up to 2023. So it's color coded for the different companies or the open or closed source nature of the project. So you can see down here at the base we have Word to Vec. And this is still an image that comes to my mind every time I think about how ChatGPT works. I always think about the words or the tokens as they're called embedded in this higher dimensional space. But I always break it down to just these 3 dimensions because like my brain can only handle 3D. But from there, everything spawned. So over here in the bottom left, you can see that Meta went the route of naming their models after Sesame Street characters for some reason. Elmo, Bert, Ernie, Albert, is that a Sesame Street character? I don't know, could be. And this would be the encoder only branch. And then the encoder decoder models that we just talked about. With T5 over in this other branch, branch that broke off in 2019, and then the big, most successful Decoder branch, GPT 1, 2, 3, and 4. But keep an eye on this branch over here with Palm and Claude. These are big models that are really gonna rival ChatGPT in a few evolutions, I think. Galactica, I might be one of the few people that got a video of this done. It was only up for one day. I filmed a video, next day, taken down. The problem was it gave like good logical scientific reasons to eat glass and stuff, and people like freaked out. But this llama is open source now. People are building on it like crazy, so I wouldn't be surprised if like big old forest pops out of this branch. Smash that subscribe button.